It was one of the bloodiest wars of the 20th century, a war that left over 3 million dead. But what if I told you, the Vietnam War wasn't just about America versus Vietnam? It started long before US troops ever stepped foot in the jungle. And it wasn't just one war, but three. Most people have no idea how deep this story really goes. Let's go back over 100 years, where it all began. To understand the Vietnam War, we have to go back to the 1800s, because this wasn't just a conflict over communism. It was about colonization, freedom, revenge, and survival. It's a story of brutal empires, divided nations, fearless fighters, and political games that shaped the modern world. From the French invasion in 1862 to the fall of Saigon in 1975, this is the full story of the Vietnam War. In the mid-19th century, Vietnam wasn't yet Vietnam as we know it. It was a collection of kingdoms, mostly ruled by local emperors. But in 1862, the French invaded. They wanted land, resources, and control in Southeast Asia. By 1887, Vietnam became part of French Indochina, alongside Laos and Cambodia. Life under French rule was brutal. Vietnamese people were treated as second-class citizens in their own land. They worked on plantations, in mines, and were heavily taxed. The French built railways and roads, but not for the Vietnamese. It was all to move resources out of the country. This lasted for decades, until resistance slowly began to rise. One man would change everything: Ho Chi Minh. Born in 1890, he grew up under French rule. But he left Vietnam and traveled the world, working as a cook, sailor, and even a cleaner in Paris. In France, he saw the rise of socialism and communism. He believed these ideas could free his people. In 1930, he helped form the Indochinese Communist Party. But freedom would have to wait. World War II exploded in Europe. In 1940, the Japanese invaded Vietnam and took control. The French didn't leave, they just handed the country over to Japan and stayed in power. It was then that Ho Chi Minh formed the Viet Minh, a nationalist group that wanted independence. They began attacking the Japanese and the French at the same time. By 1945, Japan had lost the war, and for a brief moment, Vietnam declared its independence. Ho Chi Minh stood before a crowd in Hanoi and read from the U.S. Declaration of Independence. But France wasn't ready to give up its colony. They came back armed and angry. This led to the First Indochina War. It lasted from 1946 to 1954. It was Vietnam's fight for freedom against the French Empire. The French thought it would be quick, but they underestimated how much the Vietnamese wanted independence. The Viet Minh used guerrilla warfare, attacks from the jungle, in the night, and then disappearing. In 1954, everything changed at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. The French set up a strong base in a valley, thinking they could control the region. But the Viet Minh surrounded them, dug trenches, and cut off supplies. After 57 days, the French surrendered. It was a huge moment. The world was watching. At the Geneva Conference, the country was split at the 17th parallel. North Vietnam would be led by Ho Chi Minh and his communists. South Vietnam would be backed by the West, with a non-communist government. The idea was that elections would reunite the country. But those elections never happened. The US was afraid that if Vietnam became fully communist, other Asian countries would follow, a theory known as the domino effect. So, America started pouring money and support into the South. But the South Vietnamese government was corrupt, unpopular, and weak. The people were angry. Meanwhile, in the North, Ho Chi Minh began helping communist fighters in the South, called the Viet Cong. They wanted to overthrow the Southern government and reunite the country. This is when the Second Vietnam War, what most people call the Vietnam War, truly began. By 1964, things escalated fast. After an incident in the Gulf of Tonkin, where the U.S. claimed its ships were attacked by North Vietnamese boats, President Lyndon B. Johnson ordered full military involvement. Soon, hundreds of thousands of American troops were in Vietnam. But they weren't prepared for what they faced. The jungle was thick, the terrain was unfamiliar, and the enemy knew it better than anyone. The Viet Cong didn't fight like a traditional army. They used tunnels, booby traps, ambushes. They blended in with civilians. It became nearly impossible to tell who was a fighter and who wasn't. America dropped more bombs on Vietnam than in all of World War II combined. Villages were destroyed. Forests were burned with chemicals like Agent Orange, causing horrific health issues that last even today. The war became a nightmare. In 1968, the Tet Offensive shocked the world. During a holiday truce, the Viet Cong launched surprise attacks in over 100 cities across South Vietnam. They were eventually pushed back, but the message was clear: this war wasn't going to end soon, and the US wasn't winning. Back in America, protests were erupting. Students, veterans, even soldiers started speaking out. The war was shown on TV every night: dead bodies, burning villages, crying children. People were asking, why are we still fighting? In 1969, President Nixon began a policy called Vietnamization, pulling U.S. troops out while training the South Vietnamese army to fight on their own. But secretly, he expanded the war into Cambodia and Laos, trying to cut off supply lines. It only made things worse. In 1973, a peace deal was finally signed in Paris. America agreed to leave. North Vietnam agreed to stop fighting. But as soon as U.S. troops were gone, the war started again. In 1975, North Vietnamese tanks rolled into Saigon. The U.S. embassy was overrun. Helicopters lifted people off the rooftops. It was chaos, panic, desperation. And just like that, South Vietnam fell. The war was over. Vietnam was united under communist rule. But the cost was unimaginable. Over 3 million people died. More than 58,000 Americans, over 250,000 South Vietnamese soldiers, and around 2 million civilians. It left deep scars on both sides of the world. Even today, Vietnam is still healing from the war. The land, the people, the history, all carry the weight of what happened. And for many, the question still remains. Was it worth it? Watch the next video to dive deeper into another forgotten war that changed the world.